You awoke with your body heavy beneath the thin futon, its worn fabric barely guarding against the persistent cold seeping through the wooden walls of your modest home. The air, stale and laden with the sharp scent of fish oil, mingled with the faint remnants of burnt charcoal, wrapped around you like a shroud. Your feet met the rough, uneven floor, each step pressing on stones that bit into your skin, a reminder of the relentless journey ahead. Outside, the distant creak of wagon wheels whispered through the mountain pass, accompanied by the soft rustling of leaves stirred by a hesitant morning breeze. The winding road awaited, a path as unforgiving as the silence that filled the empty space around you. You often caught yourself wondering how anyone in this unforgiving stretch of feudal Japan found hope amid such bleakness. The arduous trek, punctuated by the threat of bandits hidden beneath shadowed trees, or the peril of a fatal misstep over jagged rocks, demanded vigilance at every moment. Your task was simple, yet immense. Transport precious goods across these deadly roads. Still, heavy silence bore down on you more than the weight of your carefully tied bundles. The ritual of preparing for the day began with deliberate slowness, packing sacks, tightening ropes, and tracing each knot until it bit into the coarse fabric. Time blurred as the heartbeat within your chest aligned with this slow, measured motion, each breath mingling with the scent of worn wood and damp earth, grounding you in the somber reality. Compared to the modern world's endless hum and ceaseless rush, your morning was a study in forced patience and quiet determination. No sudden messages pinged on. Flickering screens, no honking cars disturbed the thin veil of dawn. Only the persistent, measured cadence of preparation. A rhythm more ancient than memory itself, yet strangely soothing in its bleak constancy. You repeated the process, checking the bundles, pressing your fingers against the rough cloth, adjusting straps with care born of necessity. Each movement was deliberate, almost meditative, reinforcing your fragile hope that this journey would end without incident. The scent of cedar and moss clung to the air, mingling with the metallic tang of your tools and the faint, ever-present odors of the mountain. With every breath, you felt yourself slipping further away from the safety of home and deeper into the quiet tension of the path. Then, as you lifted the last sack to settle it onto your pack, a faint, strange scent drifted on the breeze. Something unfamiliar, but faintly metallic, sharp against the earthiness that filled the morning. You paused, breath caught in your throat, senses sharpening. The wind carried a quiet murmur through the trees, subtle and swift, like whispered warnings woven into the air. The path ahead, already daunting, seemed suddenly more silent, a silence that pressed close, heavy with unseen anticipation. Before Morpheus takes you fully into his embrace, Pause for a moment. Check if you're still subscribed. These quiet journeys can vanish as easily as shadows at dawn, and I wouldn't want you to miss what comes next. A soft like a pillow beneath your weary head, would be the gentlest thank you. Tell me in the comments where you find yourself listening, and what hour the silence holds you there. Your presence keeps this little sanctuary alive. Thank you for being here. You stepped outside, the cold biting sharper now that the thin walls of your home no longer offered refuge. The air was crisp, carrying a colder promise than before, as if the mountain itself exhaled a chill that settled deep into your bones. You felt the coarse fabric of your clothing against your skin, the threads rough and unyielding, reminding you of the road ahead. The sun had just begun its slow climb, its pale light filtering hesitantly through the dense canopy overhead, casting long, wavering shadows across the narrow path. Your footsteps, slow and deliberate, pressed against the earth, soft at first beneath a scattered layer of fallen leaves, then crunching as you moved onto looser gravel. Each step was a small conquest, the uneven ground challenging your balance, inviting you to pause and listen to the deep silence that surrounded you. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath. No bird songs, no rustling beyond the occasional whisper of wind lingering between the branches. The only sound was the faint drip of water seeping from moss-covered rocks, a slow, steady tap-tap that matched the rhythm of your heartbeat. The weight of your pack grew heavier with every moment, its straps biting into your shoulders, a constant reminder of the precious cargo you bore. Your fingers brushed the rough braid of the rope securing the bundles, the coarse fibers worn smooth in places from countless adjustments. You felt the heat rising slowly from your skin, a faint sheen of sweat making the fabric cling uncomfortably. Yet the cool mountain air soon claimed you again, biting at your neck and wrists, a cruel contrast that made you aware of every inch. Exposed, your breath came in measured pulls, visible as thin smoke in the cold. Each exhale, a quiet release of tension that settled like mist around your face. You traced the familiar steps again, eyes flicking to the path ahead that twisted like a serpent beneath the ancient trees. The scent of damp earth rose with every movement, mingled with the subtle tang of pine resin and the distant crispness of snow melting in hidden crevices. It was a fragile bouquet that shifted with the breeze, sometimes thick, sometimes fading to a whisper. You caught the glint of something out of place, a sliver of polished wood, half buried beneath a scatter of brittle leaves. Pausing, you knelt slowly, the rough floor rasping against your palms as you shifted weight with deliberate care. Fingers brushed aside dirt and debris, uncovering a small object, a simple carving, weathered but unmistakable. The sheen of lacquer had long faded, and the edges were softened by years of rain and sun, yet the craftsmanship held a quiet dignity, You tucked it carefully into the folds of your clothing, a talisman against the unseen dangers lingering in these ancient woods. Resuming your pace, the forest darkened as clouds moved overhead, swallowing patches of sun and casting pools of shadow that made the path ahead seem to dissolve into an ink-black void. You slowed further, each movement precise, calculating. The low hum of insects whispered around you, barely audible, and the cool breath of wind stirred the leaves at your feet. Your senses sharpened. Every sound, every flicker of movement was magnified. The snapped twig somewhere just beyond, the distant shadow shifting between tree trunks. A steady sense of unease settled. Beneath your skin, like the slow crawl of ice through veins, the path, once familiar, now seemed unfamiliar, hostile, the very air pressing close, thick with silence. The scent of iron mingled faintly, as if old blood had stained the soil long ago, a ghost of violence that clung to the roots and moss. You could feel the weight of unseen eyes resting on you, patient and unyielding, eyes that did not blink, but watched the steady rhythm of your passage. You paused again, near a narrow bend where the road slipped sharply between two blackened stones that rose like ancient sentinels. The hush was deeper here, and the scent metallic and sharper yet, like cold steel. Your hand brushed instinctively against the wooden haft of a small knife strapped at your belt, its smooth handle worn by use, calming. Your jittering nerves. The cold seeped into your fingertips, sinking past skin and muscle until it settled in the marrow. You held your breath, senses stretched taut. Every heartbeat filled the space between your thoughts. A distant rustle just beyond the shadows drew your gaze, slow, deliberate. The forest held its secret and would not reveal it yet. Your pulse slowed, steadying in the ritual of quiet waiting. The mountain path demanded patience, each pause a negotiation between body and wilderness. The fear was a presence you carried, but it did not consume you. Instead, it focused your every sense like the gentle pressure of a guiding hand. A faint scent of smoke drifted lightly, carried on a breeze that had shifted direction. It was unexpected here, so unexpected that your mind grasped at fleeting possibilities. A traveler, another burdened, soul like yourself or something less benign. The path beneath your feet seemed to narrow, the trees closing ranks as the shadows deepened, drawing you inward like a slow tide. The cold grasp on your skin tightened, and a single droplet of sweat traced a slow line down your temple, mingling with the roughness of dirt. You adjusted the packs one last time, fingers lingering on the knots, steadying your breath before taking another step forward. The light faded further, a curtain descending, yet somewhere beyond the weave of branches, a soft glow appeared, faint, flickering. The uncertainty of what it meant pulled taut the thread of your resolve. You felt the moment stretching, an endless horizon of quiet and waiting. And as you moved cautiously through the fading light, a shadow detached itself from the trees, a figure poised silently at the edge of your vision, watching. You freeze for a moment, the faint shape lingering just beyond the edge of your vision. The shadows between the trees cling desperately to its form, blurring the lines until it seems more a trick of the light than any true figure. Your breath catches subtly in your throat, cold and shallow, as you strain your ears against the muted chorus of the forest. Distant dripping water, a low rustle in the underbrush, the hiss of a tentative breeze curling through the leaves above. Every muscle tightens, a slow tightening that begins deep in your belly and creeps outward, clutching your limbs in a taut grip. The weight on your back presses harder at the same moment, the rough straps biting into your shoulders with renewed insistence. Your fingers find the worn handle of the knife at your belt without conscious thought, the familiar curve of the wood grounding you like an anchor swung within the tempest. The forest remains quiet, but for that soft whisper of movement just beyond the twisted branches. Your eyes flicker, tracing the inky perimeter where shadow turns to shape, and then back again to shadow. You step forward slowly, the gravel beneath your worn shoes crunching faintly, the sound swallowed almost immediately by the thick hush embracing the ancient trees. The fading light dims your surroundings, painting everything in shades of gray and muted green. The creeping dusk slipping past the leaves like liquid smoke. Your heartbeat settles into a steady rhythm, measured and slow, a candle flickering gently against the oppressive dark. The air is chillier now, seeping through the thin fabric of your jacket, sharpening the scent of damp earth and pine, resin clinging to your skin. You take another cautious step, then another, each movement deliberate and careful, the ground rough and uneven beneath your feet. Your senses stretch taut, catching the faint metal tang that still lingers on the breeze, an echo from earlier, the sharpness of blood or steel, elusive as a half-remembered dream. Your hand grazes the wooden talisman hidden beneath your clothing, its surface textured and worn, a silent promise nestled close to your heart. You close your eyes briefly, letting the cool touch steady your trembling thoughts, the tightness in your chest loosening just enough to let measured breath flow in and out. The path bends ahead, narrowing where ancient stones rise on either side like stoic guardians, faded to charcoal in the dim light. You pause again, crouching slightly to rest a moment, your fingertips tracing the rough bark of a nearby tree. The coldness of the wood seeps into your skin, grounding you amidst the growing unease that coils low in your belly. The quiet holds itself like a held breath, waiting, as if even the forest itself anticipates what may come next. A fragile warmth flickers in the distance, a soft glow cradled by the gathering shadows. It is faint, unsteady, like the last embers of a dying fire, shy and hesitant to hold their light against the burgeoning night. You shift your weight, muscles taut, eyes fixed on that faint pulse. The scent of smoke drifts gradually closer, cutting through the crisp mountain air, smoothing the edges of your sharp alertness for a heartbeat, just long enough for a shadow to detach itself more clearly from the woods. The figure moves slowly, deliberately, stepping lightly on the leaf-strewn ground. No sudden sound announces its approach. Every footfall is careful, measured, a whispering echo of your own cautious advance. You imagine the tension coiling in the other's body, maybe a reflection of your own wary heartbeat, or perhaps something older, colder. Your breath forms fragile clouds that drift and dissolve in the space between you, the silence folding tightly as the figure draws nearer. You feel the sting of cold air filling your lungs, full and sharp, carrying with it the faintest trace of scorched wood and something metallic. The sharp scent anchors you there, poised on the edge between fear and curiosity, a quivering balance that threatens to tilt at any moment. Your grip on the knife's handle tightens instinctively, skin pressing into the smooth wood, a tiny island of warmth spreading slowly through your palm. You remind yourself to listen to the crackle of the burning embers far off, to the subtle shift of leaves stirred by unseen feet, to the pulse of your own controlled breath. Each sound threads around you, weaving a fragile cord of awareness and calm. The figure pauses at last, emerging slightly from the shadows, a silhouette faintly outlined against a low fire's glow. Your eyes catch a flash of something on its belt, gleaming dimly like a sliver of moonlight caught in metal. You notice the slow rise and fall of a chest beneath a heavy coat, the deliberate stillness of a body trained in silence. No sudden movement breaks the stillness, only the gentle flicker of flame, casting wavering shadows over weathered features. For a moment, the world contracts into the narrow space between you. Two solitary shapes, same ancient road. The cold seeps deeper still, threading its way along spine and limbs, and you feel the sharp edge of awareness sharpen into something almost too fragile to hold. Then, with the patience of the mountain itself, the figure inclines its head, just enough, a shadowed gesture, lost almost to the dusk, before turning back towards the darkness beyond the fire's reach. You remain rooted, breath still caught between quiet and motion, watching as the soft glow dims and disappears slowly, swallowed whole by the encroaching night. The silence rushes back, thick and full and pulsing beneath your skin. You gather your weight once more, adjusting the packs and tightening knots, with hands steady despite the cold. Your eyes trace the path ahead, a ribbon of black narrowing and twisting beneath ancient trees whose limbs seem to reach out like specters in the gloaming. A sudden metallic click echoes faintly, a sound so slight it could be mistaken for the settling of old wood or a stray stone shifting. But to you it rings clear, a whispered promise of things yet unseen. Your breath stalls, muscles coil. Beneath the quiet, the mountain holds its secret tightly, and you step forward into the waiting dark. You remain motionless for a moment longer, the fragile shape lingering just beyond your vision's edge. The faint flicker of firelight casts wavering shadows that seem to breathe alongside the stillness. The night presses in closer, drawing its cold fingers tighter around your chest. Your muscles resist the urge to flee. Instead, you focus on the rhythm of your breath, slow, deliberate, steady as the mountain's timeless watch. The scent of smoke curls faintly upward, a lingering trace that threads through the crisp air as faint as a half-remembered memory. You inhale deeply, the sharp breath filling your lungs with cold and warmth intertwined, grounding you in this fragile moment. A single heartbeat carries the weight of centuries, the mountain's legacy held silently beneath your feet. Every sensation sharpens, the rough bark beneath grasped fingers, the coolness of the earth seeping through worn soles, the damp embrace of moss clinging to stone. A shiver ripples through your spine. Subtle but unyielding, the night's breath brushes your cheek like the soft caress of unseen hands, carrying whispers you cannot yet understand. You take a cautious step forward, gravel crunching softly, the sound swallowed immediately by the encompassing hush. It is a sound both solitary and profound, the echo of your passage marked only by the fleeting disturbance of silence. Ahead, the faint glow pulses once more, hesitant, like a flickering flame, struggling to hold itself against the creeping dusk. Shadows gather and dissolve, weaving a tapestry of obscured shapes and tentative light. You trace the outlines with your eyes, searching for answers that do not come. Only the slow dance of dark and warmth. The path narrows beneath towering pines, their needles whispering secrets in the wind, their roots gripping the earth like ancient hands. Your fingers brush against the talisman tucked close to your heart, its smooth surface a gentle reminder of your fragile hope, a silent promise in a world that offers few. The weight of your pack presses heavier now, straps biting deeper into your shoulders, tethering you tightly to the task. Distant murmur of the forest stirs, leaves rustling, a twig snapping far off. Your senses flare, heightened to a fragile edge. Eyes scan the darkened periphery, chasing movement that retreats like shadows at dawn. The air shifts, carrying with it a sharper, metallic scent, cold and unyielding, slipping beneath the pine's resinous breath. Your hand brushes the worn haft of the knife once again, seeking the familiar comfort of its solid curve. A soft crackle splits the silence. A branch yielding beneath careful weight, or perhaps something more deliberate. The sound fractures the night's stillness, momentarily breaking the spell, sharpening the knot of tension coiled in your gut. You halt, crouching low, muscles poised yet relaxed, breath long and steady, to steady the steady pounding in your ears. Time distills into presence, each second an eternity balanced on the edge of shadow. The glow ahead steadies softly, revealing a crude clearing where the fire's last embers pulse faint warmth through the gathering cold. Ash drifts upward, like ghosts caught in slow motion, swirling into the dense canopy far above. You lean forward, just enough to glean shapes, stones arranged in a worn circle, scattered remnants of wood long burnt, the faint curve of a dry leaf edged with frost. A low, almost imperceptible sound ripples through the air beside you. A breath pulled too sharply, a fabric shifting with cautious movement. Your heart tightens, illuminated by the flicker of flame and shadow. You turn slowly, scanning the zone between branches and trunk, where darkness folds in layers so thick they seem to swallow light whole. Something watches, patient, deliberate, unseen, but palpably near. The chill presses deeper now. Sluggish frost, creeping along nerves that throb beneath skin and bone. You adjust your footing carefully, reluctant yet compelled to move onward. The faint warmth at the clearing's heart calls softly, a contrast to the brittle cold teeth of night sinking in all around. You feel the thread of tension unwind slightly, a fragile calm descending like a veil. Your gaze drifts skyward through the skeletal lattice of branches, the moon a pale witness to every silent step. The stars lie hidden behind cloud swaths heavy with distant storms, the promise of rain whispered on the breeze. The scent of wet stone climbs slowly, mingling with fading smoke and damp earth. A quiet fusion of endings and new beginnings. You resume your path with deliberate slowness. The road beneath your feet, a ribbon of shadow and light that stretches into the unknown. Each step is a slow surrender to the mountain's patient will, a negotiation written in breath and heartbeat. The talisman's cold surface glimmers faintly beneath your coat, a solitary point of light in the gathering dark. Then, just as you begin to settle into the rhythm once more, a sudden sharp sound fractures the stillness, the unmistakable scraping of metal, slow and deliberate, sliding against stone. Frozen, you turn toward the source, senses straining to trace the cold whisper through the night. The shadow that moved before now stands clearly separate from the trees, a figure stepped into the weak glow of a fallen lantern, its face hidden beneath the brim of a worn hat. The quiet click of a blade sliding free from its sheath rings through the air, deliberate and unhurried. You feel the mountain hold its breath with you, the vast silence tightening like a noose, just as the fire flickers low, threatening to die entirely. You froze in place, the faint scrape of metal echoing sharp and clear beneath the thick cloak of night. Your breath, barely a whisper, curled slowly from parted lips, mingling with the cold air, like smoke dissipating on the wind. The figure stood just beyond the flickering light of the dying fire, a silhouette carved from shadows and half-remembered shapes. The worn brim of the hat dipped low, obscuring the face further, but the slow, deliberate slide of a blade from its sheath was unmistakable, silent, practiced, and eerily calm. The weight on your back pressed down harder, the rough straps cutting deeper into sore skin. As your fingers wrapped tightly around the knife's handle, its familiar curve was a small comfort, warm and steady beneath. Your grasp, a tether to the steadiness you fought to maintain. Your heartbeat slowed deliberately, a measured rhythm in the quiet chaos unfolding in your mind. You felt the mountain hold its breath with you, the fire's glow casting trembling light that barely reached between the tangled roots and shadowed stones. The scent of cold iron floated faintly, sharp and clean, weaving with the bitter taste of smoke still clinging to the night air. You took a careful step forward, gravel whispering beneath your worn shoes, the sound swallowed almost instantly by the wide, suffocating hush of the forest. Every movement was cautious, deliberate, an extension of the slow, even rhythm that had come to govern your days on this road. The faint warmth from the dying fire brushed against your face, an ember of life in the devouring dark. You focused on that faint pulse, grounding yourself in the delicate balance between fear and curiosity. The figure moved then, a silent shift like the brushing of silk on stone, stepping fully into the firelight. You caught the briefest glimpse of eyes, dark, unreadable pools reflecting a quiet resolve. The slow rise and fall of a heavy coat, worn and weathered like the old road beneath your feet. No haste, no sudden gesture, only the steady, slow breathing of a stranger bound by the same cold night and relentless path. The light flickered again, shadows twisting and dancing across features lined with unseen stories and unspoken caution. Your breath caught in your throat, the air sharp as a blade scraping against stone. Time narrowed into a fragile thread, stretched taut beneath the weight of presence and silence. The figure extended a gloved hand slightly, palm open but empty, a silent offering or a cautious truce. You hesitated, muscles coiled like tightly wound springs, the adrenaline simmering beneath the slow crawl of lingering dread. The chill pressed deeper still, fingers of frost crawling along your spine as your mind raced to interpret the gesture. The quiet of the forest seemed to hold its own breath, the usual murmurs of nightlife dimming to a suspended hush. Around you, the faint crackle of embers in the fire's heart taunted a warmth that threatened to flicker out. The sharp scent of smoked wood mingled with the earthy breath of pine, thick and unyielding. You reached out slowly, fingers brushing the stranger's weathered palm, a touch brief and tentative, electric in its simplicity. The figure nodded once, a soft motion almost lost in the shifting shadows. A bond forged not with words but with the silent understanding between two solitary souls carved raw by the unforgiving road. The tension eased, replaced by a fragile thread of connection, stretching thin across the dark. You both turned your gaze back to the path, where the road wound onward beneath towering pines, their needles whispering ancient secrets in the cold breeze. Somewhere far off, the faint hoot of an owl rippled through the trees, a lonely call threading through the dense silence. The fire's embers sputtered low, casting soft halos of faint light that flickered and danced over smooth stones and twisted roots, a subtle pulse against the encroaching dark. The weight on your back remained heavy, the packs shifting slightly as your fingers tightened around the worn knots. Every step was a slow negotiation between endurance and the creeping cold that seeped unrelentingly into bones and blood. The metallic tang lingered faintly, an echo of what had passed, a quiet reminder of the dangers hidden in the thickets beyond sight. Yet beneath this undercurrent of threat, a small ember of hope stirred, fragile and guarded. Together, you and the stranger began the slow journey forward, footsteps falling softly upon the earth. The night pressed close, a dense shroud woven of mist and shadow, but now shared, a silent pact forged in the stillness. The scent of damp earth rose again, mingled with faint traces of burnt wood and crisp mountain air, a delicate tapestry of memory and place. Above you, the sky shifted subtly, the clouds parting just enough to reveal the faintest glimmer of stars, pale and distant. A lazy wind stirred the pines, threading through branches like fingers tracing old scars. The hush of night was a living thing, pressing against skin and senses, yet tempered now by the presence beside you. Your eyes caught the soft glow of a distant lantern, flickering gently in the underbrush, a beacon or a warning you could not yet tell. The road ahead seemed to tighten, narrowing between ancient sentinels of stone and gnarled trees that reached overhead like watchful spirits. The cold bit deeper still, a slow sharpness that settled beneath muscle and sinew, lacing every breath with the scent of earth and iron. Then, as the firelight faded behind you and the stranger's outline blurred once more into shadow. A sudden rustle cracked sharply from the darkness to your left. Your heart jumped, muscles tensing in silent readiness, knife poised like an extension of your will. The chill of night descended heavier, folding around. You like the closing of a long night's secret. And somewhere ahead, beyond the narrow curve where the path disappeared under twisted roots, the faintest sound whispered, a deliberate, slow footfall, separate from your own. The forest held its breath, the shadows thickening as you lingered at the edge of the dim clearing. The faint warmth of dying embers flickered like a hesitant heartbeat against the cold night air, casting wavering shapes that seemed to dance just beyond the reach of your vision. Your senses stretched taut, each breath sharp and shallow, mingling with the scent of burnt wood and damp pine needles that lingered heavy and sweet in the stillness. Your fingers curled tightly around the worn haft of your knife, its smooth wood, a small but steady comfort, pressed into your palm. The pack's weight bit deeper into your shoulders, the rough straps pressing cracks of cold through the fabric of your worn jacket. Each detail imprinted itself onto your skin, the cold bite at your neck, the whisper of wind threading through branches, the faint crunch of leaves slipping beneath your boots. You took a slow, deliberate step forward, gravel crunching softly, swallowed almost immediately by the dense silence that draped the woods like a heavy quilt. The path curved just beyond the firelight, twisting under gnarled roots that stretched like ancient fingers, gripping the earth with stubborn resolve. The faint glow pulsed again, a fragile beacon amidst the encroaching gray, inviting yet uncertain. The weight of stillness pressed around you, dense as the shadows pooling beneath towering pines, whose limbs wove thick tapestries overhead, blotting out the early stars. The earthy scent of moss and wet stone clung to the air, mingling with the faint metallic tang that lingered unyielding, an echo of past violence or warning unspoken. Your breath seeped in thin clouds, each exhale a quiet surrender to the slow dance of dusk. You paused near the curve, crouching slightly to steady your limbs, fingers brushing the rough bark of a nearby sapling. The texture was cool and slick with evening dew, grounding your spiraling thoughts as the chill seeped inward, threading through marrow and sinew. A shiver passed beneath your skin like a whispered warning, subtle and persistent, folding tightly around your spine. The path ahead dissolved into a soft blur of dark and silence, every sense straining for the faintest flicker of movement or sound. Suddenly, a subtle shimmer rippled through the shadows, a flicker of movement just at the edge of your vision, barely there, like a breath held too long. You inhaled slowly, eyes narrowing, muscles taut as the whisper of a sliding blade cleaved the quiet once more. The metallic scrape was slow and deliberate, precise as the shifting of a ghost, stirring the air with a silent menace. Your hand tightened instinctively on the knife, fingers nesting around its familiar curve as you cocked your weight forward on the balls of your feet. The faint light revealed just enough, an uneven shape moving between trees, deliberate steps measured in rhythm with your own. The flicker of gleaming metal caught your eye once again, but no sudden threat leapt forward. Instead, the figure paused, lingering as if bound by the same quiet tension, a shadow poised on the precipice between silence and action. You exhaled out the tension in a slow, steady stream. Your heartbeat found a measured cadence. The familiar rhythm, a fragile thread weaving calm through the tightening darkness. The figure's heavy coat shifted gently as the soft wind stirred, carrying the familiar sense of dry leaves, smoke, and that persistent metallic edge. You clung to the warmth of the talisman, pressed close to your chest, the smooth, worn surface steady beneath your fingers, an anchor in the uncertain expanse. Time stretched in a fragile bubble. The forest around you seemed to shrink, folding into the narrowed space where two figures hovered on the edge of something unspoken. You and the stranger, ghostly silhouettes carved from the same cold fabric of the night, locked in a silent pact. The chill sharpened into a quiet pulse, threading through your veins like slow ice, but the fire's faint glow lent a tentative comfort, a fleeting promise of light amid all the gathering dark. Careful now, you shifted your gaze along the winding path that disappeared into deeper shadow, the rough earth pressing beneath your shoes like the steady tick of a clock marking the slow passing of hours. Somewhere far ahead, a faint rustle echoed, soft, deliberate, and almost lost to the night, and your senses snapped back into sharp focus. The tension settled low, a coil wound tight, balanced on the thin edge of watchfulness. You began to take measured steps forward once more, each movement careful, reverent, as if disturbing the silence might unravel the fragile thread tethering you to purpose. The forest seemed to lean inward, ancient limbs inching close to press their secrets against your skin. The cold fingers of night curled deeper beneath your jacket, a slow seep that bore the scent of iron and earth, mingling with the retreating warmth of smoke and faint wood smoke, drifting like a whispered memory. Your eyes caught the soft flicker of the lantern again, an ember glowing faintly in the distance, casting pools of golden warmth in the suffocating dark. It pulsed once, then dimmed, flickering uncertainly. The path narrowed here, hemmed tight by twisted roots and moss-blackened stones that seemed to lean close in silent judgment. A sudden shift in the air made you halt, the subtle splintering of a twig breaking the hushed reverence, and your breath locked deep in your chest. Every muscle tightened, a slow coil of alertness building beneath your skin. Your knife was ready, the familiar weight a steady pulse in your grasp. Eyes darted toward the shadows, straining for the source of the sound, the invisible watcher whose presence thickened the night like a slow-moving tide. And then, beyond the curve where the path vanished into tangled darkness, a movement too swift and deliberate to be a trick of light. A shadow detached itself with purpose, crossing the threshold of view. It paused, low and deliberate, a breathless moment suspended on the cusp. Your gaze fixed on that silhouette as the first faint shimmer of movement blurred it once more, the pulse of your heart lingering in the silence. An unspoken question, woven deep between the trees and the watching stars. The figure's silhouette blurred once more as it slipped back into the shadows, swallowed by the cold embrace of the forest. You remained still, every breath measured and slow, mingling with the chill that passed like whispered frost across your skin. The fire's glow behind you flickered low, its last embers sighing soft warmth, before surrendering to night's silence. The weight of your pack bit deep into your shoulders, the rough straps pressing marks into skin already tender with long hours of travel. Your fingers curled around the familiar haft of your knife, steadying the tremor that threatened to rise beneath the steady pulse of your heart. The path ahead wound like a thin ribbon swallowed by the thickened dark, twisting between ancient trees that leaned low with moss-streaked limbs, their gnarled fingers nearly brushing your face. Your steps resumed, with deliberate slowness, gravel crunching faintly beneath worn shoes, each sound absorbed almost instantly by the dense quiet of the night forest. The air hung heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and pine sap, mingling with the cold metallic tang that lingered on your tongue like a distant warning, persistent and elusive. Your breath formed faint clouds that scattered slowly in the stillness, stretching thin and dissolving into the dark. Every sense sharpened, the subtle scratch of a leaf shifting beneath unseen footsteps, the soft hum of night insects grazing through the underbrush, a distant cry that echoed faintly and then faded like a secret swallowed by the trees. The weight of eyes upon you settled there, unseen but palpable, watching, waiting, with patience so ancient it felt woven into the very soil beneath your feet. Ahead, shadows gathered in deeper pools where the forest canopy thickened, blotting out all but the faintest glow of stars hidden behind the veil of heavy clouds. You approached a narrow bend where the path squeezed tight, hemmed by rough stones darkened with moss and damp streaks, standing like silent sentinels, guarding a secret too fragile to speak aloud. You crouched slowly, fingertips trailing over the cold bark of a sapling as the chill seeped deeper, threading muscle, and bone with slow ice. A soft breath slipped from your lips, mingling warmth and cold, a fragile offering to the stillness. The faint glow of a distant lantern pulsed weakly ahead, an uncertain beacon that flickered between embrace and fade. A soft reminder that life endured even here, beneath the heavy hand of night. You felt the talisman hidden beneath your coat, its worn surface smooth and steady against your skin, a silent promise nestled close to your heart. Your hands returned to the ropes securing your pack, adjusting knots with slow, methodical care, the coarse fibers pressing comfort into your trembling fingers. Time seemed to dilate, diluted in the measured cadence of breath and careful steps. A sudden rustle broke the silence, a dry twig snapping somewhere just beyond the curve, and your body tensed, muscles coiling tight, like wire drawn taut. Your knife rested heavy and familiar in your palm, an extension of resolve and quiet readiness. Eyes darted toward the shadows, searching for movement, shapes twisting against the slow swirl of swirling leaves. Where moonlight dared not reach, the figure reappeared, emerging cautiously from the black folds your earth and night conspired to conceal. The worn brim of its hat dipped just low enough to cloak its face, the firelight casting fleeting glimpses of a calm, unreadable gaze. Its coat swayed slightly, with subtle steps, silent against the earth's rough breath. The blade, gleaming cold and unhurried, slid back into its sheath with a soft, deliberate click that echoed like a whispered call through the dense hush. You exhaled, the breath slow and steady, a fragile thread of calm knitting you to this shared moment of careful silence. The faint smoke that carried across the bitter night air mingled with the scent of pine and moss, weaving a tapestry of warmth and decay, a fragile balance held between light and dark. The figure extended an empty gloved hand, a silent invitation, a pact forged in the quiet language of two souls bound by shadows. Your fingers brushed the worn leather gently, the touch brief yet electric, a tether forged not by words, but by the shared rhythm of long, solitary journeys. The tension softened, the cold seeped back, a slow ache blossoming beneath skin and bone, but the steady pulse of shared purpose held firm. You both turned your gaze toward the winding path, where ancient trees nodded overhead and roots wove tight, like the threads of a story too old to forget. The quiet of the forest deepened, each footfall a measured beat that traced the slow, deliberate pulse of the mountain's watch. You felt the fragile ember of hope kindling somewhere beyond the dull ache of weariness and the prickling dread beneath your ribs. The lantern's glow flickered again, a hesitant breath of light warring against night's pull. Then, without warning, the faintest sound drifted from the gloom, a soft scraping, slow and deliberate, metal against stone. Your muscles coiled, breath stilled, senses sharpened to a razor edge. The forest fell away, space contracting to the narrow ribbon between you and the dark. A figure stepped through the veil, their features obscured beneath a heavy cloak, and paused, shadowed and still. In their hand, something gleamed, thin and sharp, catching the faint light, as if it held the last breath of day trapped within its steel. Your heart thrummed a slow, deep beat, caught between stillness and the beginning of something unknown. The night awaited your next move. The path ahead swallowed by darkness and silence. The weight of a choice pressing like stone against your chest. You remained still, the chill of the night pressing close, as the shadowed figure melted away into the dense clutch of trees. The last flicker of firelight shivered softly behind you, its warmth ebbing into the vast cold that wrapped around your shoulders like a heavy cloak. Your breath steadied, slow and taut, as the weight of your pack pressed insistently, leather straps biting into you with a dull ache that echoed the tightening knot in your chest. Underfoot, the gravel whispered faint, resisting the stillness with a brittle crunch that barely disturbed the thick air. The ancient forest, with its towering sentinels of pine and cedar, loomed silent and watchful, their gnarled limbs arching overhead like arches, stone. Patches of shadow clung to everything, cloaking the path ahead in uncertain gray where your eyesight strained to pierce the twilight. The cool earth exhaled a damp, mossy scent, thick and steady, mingling with the lingering sharpness of the metallic tang you had tasted on the breeze earlier. A ghost's breath, elusive and uneasy. Your fingers closed once again around the talisman pressed close to your chest. The smooth, worn surface, a whisper of comfort amid the cold's merciless grip. The faint pulse of blood beneath your skin echoed in time with the slow rhythm of your breath, steadying your senses, reminding you that despite the heaviness of night and weight, you held this moment, this fragile thread of resolve. You moved then, cautiously, each step a measured conversation with the rough earth beneath you. The gravel shifted beneath your worn shoes, a hesitant murmur swallowed swiftly by the profound hush the forest maintained, as if every leaf and root held its breath. The path curved gently, snaking beneath twisted branches where flecks of stars fought with swaths of gathering cloud far above the woven canopy. Cool, moist air clung to your skin, the scent of pine resin mixed now with the faint, distant promise of snowfall, sharp and crystalline, white and untouched. A soft rustling broke the stillness, distant yet crisp, like the gentle drag of fabric against itself. Your muscles tensed, slow and deliberate reflexes tightening the grip on your knife's hilt. The familiar curve warmed your palm, anchoring your focus, even as your heart hummed a low, patient beat. Your eyes flicked to the deepening shadows, tracing the line where darkness melted into more darkness, a liminal stage where the forest seemed to exhale secrets only half-formed. Ahead, the narrow path squeezed tightly between two blackened stones, charcoal gray and slick with moisture. They stood like ancient guardians, silent and immovable. You crouched low, hands resting lightly on cool bark beside the trail. The rough surface seemed to hum faintly beneath your fingers, cold and steady, grounding you against the creeping unease rising in your gut. A breath billowed slowly, clouding in the cold air, mingling warmth and chill as it dissolved nearly before it left your lips. The faint glow of a distant lantern flickered again, the pulse of hesitant light wavering through the dense branches, beckoning and reluctant all at once. Beneath it lay a small clearing, hidden in the fold of earth and shadow, the ground littered with brittle leaves and the scattered ash of old embers long extinguished. Saw the fragile quiet gathering here, a pause in the night where time thinned and whispered. Suddenly, a subtle shift, a flicker just at the corner of your vision. You froze, breath still, the knife steady in your grasp. A faint scraping ticked through the air, a deliberate scraping, cold and slow, metal sliding against stone or worn wood with practiced precision. The sound echoed faintly, a whisper caught in the weighty silence. Your senses sharpened, each one stretched taut like a carefully drawn bowstring. From the shadows stepped the figure once more, dragging the darkness with it like a cloak. This time it moved slower, deliberate, almost cautious, as though testing the fragile boundary between presence and concealment. The hat dipped low, face still cloaked, but you caught the glint of something in their hand. A narrow blade, thin and sleek, catching the flickering. Light, like a sliver of moon. You held your breath, muscles coiled but calm, a stillness forged from long nights on the road. The figure paused, silent and unreadable. Their gaze, though hidden, felt as relentless as the mountain air, watchful, knowing. Between you lay the cold clearing, the dying embers' faint warmth teasing the shadows, fragile as a dream. The soft rustle of cloth accompanied the slow slide of the blade back into its sheath. An unhurried sound, careful and final. The figure lifted a hand then, gloved and empty, palm turned upward in a gesture without words. No threat, no demand, only an unspoken offering, a slender thread stretched between two solitary travelers beneath the ancient sky. You move toward this fragile piece, fingers brushing cautiously against the gloved hand, but touch brief yet charged, a silent truce sealed in the deep pulse of midnight. The cold folded back slightly, warmth flickering faintly within, tempered by the enduring weight of night and stone. Together you turned back to the narrowing path, steps falling slow, deliberate, echoing in agreement. The air thrummed with quiet certainty, the forest holding its breath alongside you. The stark scent of iron hung faint yet firm, a reminder of lingering shadows and unseen dangers that trailed as closely as the cold. Your eyes caught once more the faint lantern's pulse, a wavering flame stubbornly holding light against the dark. The path ahead coiled, twisted among ancient stones crowned with frost, their jagged edges softened by the blanket of moss. The night deepened, folding its secrets tight around each step. Suddenly, a sharp, scraping sound shattered the fragile calm. A slow draw of metal, faint but deliberate, piercing the encompassing silence with its subtle threat. Your heart surged, body taut as the shadows seemed to pulse and edge closer, and from the blackness a new shape emerged, quicker than the rest, deliberate and purposeful, gliding between the gnarled roots like a whisper on stone. You held your breath, poised on the cusp where shadow and intention met, watching as the unknown figure stepped into your line of sight, a presence born of night and waiting. You held your breath. The night thickened around you, like a slow tide pulling at the edges of your senses. The stranger's gloved hand, warm beneath your cautious fingers, had forged a fragile truce between two solitary souls bound by the mountain's restless watch. The faint ember of firelight dimmed to a mere pulse, yet amidst the deep chill, a quiet comfort settled, a calm that weighed softly against the cold. Together, you stepped forward, the gravel beneath your worn shoes crunching gently, echoing like the measured tick of a clock counting down the moments that led you here and beyond. The path wound beneath ancient pines, their gnarled branches bending low as if whispering farewell, while the forest around you seemed to breathe in slow, heavy sighs. With each careful step, the weight pressing your shoulders did not lessen, but it transformed, becoming less a burden and more a tether to this sacred journey's end. The talisman pressed close against your chest, pulsed faintly, a steady heartbeat matching your own, a silent promise kept through trials and shadows. The metallic tang that had haunted the air all night faded into the quiet earth, leaving only the scent of pine resin and distant, fading smoke. The stranger walked beside you without haste, their presence a steady pulse amid the wilderness's unyielding silence. Your eyes caught the soft flicker of a distant lantern, the same wavering light that had beckoned you through the forest's grasp. It held a gentle warmth, a beacon not of danger, but of homecoming, nestled in the crook of a moss-covered tree. As you neared the clearing, the cold surrounding you softened, as if the mountain itself exhaled a final breath of peace. Tufts of mist curled gently around ancient stones, ancient witnesses that had held their secrets long enough. The fading firelight revealed a small circle, worn but whole, a place where countless travelers before you had paused, perhaps for rest or reflection. You knelt beside the stones, fingers brushing over the cold moss and rough bark nearby. The forest's hush was nearly complete now, broken only by the distant call of an owl, its lonely voice threading through the night like a lullaby for weary souls. The distant stars peeked shyly through parting clouds, their pale glow a soft reassurance after the darkness. The stranger lowered to one knee as well, their breath mingling with yours in the chill air. Without words, you both acknowledged the shared weight of countless journeys, of battles fought not just with blade, but with endurance and hope. The silent understanding wrapped around you as completely as the night, a delicate shield against the infinite unknown. You reached slowly into your pack, fingers brushing the worn carving you had found earlier, a small talisman against unseen dangers, now a symbol of survival and quiet victory. You held it up to the faint glow of the lantern, its smooth surface reflecting the flickering light like a tiny, steadfast sun. Together, you placed the talisman on the stones between. You, a silent offering to the road, the forest, and all the wandering spirits who had passed this way before. It was a small act, simple and unassuming, yet it felt monumental, a closing of a long chapter written in sweat, silence, and shadow. As the first pale fingers of dawn began to stretch across the eastern sky, the forest seemed to exhale a final breath, releasing the weight of the night. The brittle chill softened, and distant birds stirred, whispering tentative songs that promised renewal beyond the trials borne by ankle and blade. You rose slowly, shoulders less burdened, not because the packs grew lighter, but because the journey's purpose had found its quiet conclusion. The stranger met your gaze, eyes dark but softened now by the first light of morning. A faint, almost imperceptible nod passed between you, a farewell made, not in words but in shared memory. With deliberate calm, you turned toward the winding path that snaked gently downward, away from the clearing and the shadows that had clung so tightly. The world felt new but familiar, as if you were stepping from a long dream into the first, fragile clarity of waking life. The pack shifted with each step, the rough straps digging once again into your skin. But now they marked endurance, not torment. The scent of earth and pine filled your lungs, a whispered promise of rebirth even in the coldest places. Behind you, the lantern's faint glow faded into the slow encroaching light of dawn. The mountain exhaled again, heavy and vast, and the ancient trees bent their limbs in quiet farewell, their needles glimmering as dew caught the growing sunlight. You walked on, the road beneath, your feet steady and sure, carrying you forward beyond the cold silence and shadows. a soft warmth unfurled deep within, a lone ember that would keep you moving through whatever nights remained. And as the forest slowly woke around you, a gentle peace settled beneath your skin, the kind born not of absence, but of hard-won understanding. The long journey had ended, its story inscribed in the lines of your hands and the steady beat of your heart. The cold mountain held its secrets still, wrapped in moss and stone. But for now, you carried something quieter, an ember of hope, a talisman of calm, a story closed with grace beneath the watchful sky. The winding path stretched onward, inviting and endless, a soft thread woven into the fabric of dawn. And you followed it, step by measured step, into the waiting light.